All right. Hello, everyone. This is Twisted with Open Sorcery, and today we got ourselves not only myself but Lono and Devi. And today we're going to be talking about the void as a concept, our experiences with it, or at least those that are significant enough to share, and pretty much just running down the general gist of what the void is. So first, we'll go ahead and start with you, Lono. What does the term the void mean to you?
To me specifically, the void is a, a realm. Uh, it is a energy source that you can tap into. In Hindu mythology, they say that the gods all come from a certain loka. I believe that the void is a loka, a sort of place that is itself and emanates itself within itself. It is the void is not the Akash. It is not the Akashic record, but it is also not the spirit realm either. It's more of a place that stores a vast amount of ether that one cannot physically attain in this lifetime, almost like the rest of the information that makes up you, that they cannot store in the Akashic record. That sounds all right. Um, for specifically going into the void is almost like crossing the abyss. It is a ritual. It is like it's a coming to of a magician, I guess. So yeah.
Now, there's two things I want you to go ahead and kind of like just very quickly elaborate on for those who may not necessarily be aware of what these concepts are. So, first thing that you mentioned is the Akasha, or as mentioned in a Western sense, the Akashic records. Could you go ahead and just very quickly explain what that is so people understand? Hey, look, this is not necessarily a part of the void in what you're trying to explain. Now
Yes,
I'll ask the second thing after.
The Akashic record is a place that stores the vast amount of knowledge of humanity. People have seen it as a infinite library that extends uh, towards the horizon. It they say that your life book can be found in the library, and if you read of your life book, you will know of the events in your life. You may find that your life book is blank, meaning you create your life, your destiny almost. Um, it in a way it's bunkus, but the meditation technique of going there and doing all of this is a real phenomenon that we can how would you say notice or take note of. uh, I would say that if the Akashic record was at one point in one point in the tree of life, then this void would be the tree of death. It is a counterpart to it. In certain mythologies, they have melded into one space, and that space can be reached uh, through a bridge. But in the Western mythology and Western magic, they are two separate places. So, yeah.
Well, now there's something else I want to go ahead and touch upon from what you just said right there, but just to keep it in chronological order, the crossing of the abyss, something that you mentioned. I know that all of us here went ahead and talked about it over on the Familiar Company podcast, episode 5, where it was called The Little Death, and talked about that. But just very quickly, for the case of this conversation, for frame of reference in relevance to the concept of the void, can you please explain really quickly either, I'll go ahead and ask you, Divinium. Crossing the abyss, real quick, what exactly is that for, the sake of, letting people know? before we delve more so into the void itself.
Fair enough. So, crossing the abyss, that is going to be taking apart layers of yourself, kind of like an onion, right? And stripping down to the bare bones of who you are. You have to let go of ego. Crossing the abyss is actually a very traumatic experience. And unfortunately, a lot of times it is done through trauma of just the mundane variety. Um, but it is a way to connect with the all, the source, the um, being that came before us all, that we are a piece of, and we are that piece of source experiencing itself through us, if that makes sense.
Oh yes, yes.
So I did want to touch on the void as well, because I think Lono explained it beautifully, but I also wanted to bring in another concept that I've read about in terms of the feminine and the masculine. And I don't know about you guys, but I literally have a tapestry that is the tree of life, but it's also the yin and yang right in front of me every day. And void is described as potential, but it is also the feminine. It is the possibility. It is energy that you cannot use, but it has, you can draw it up and breathe life from it, but it is never life itself. Um, it is and isn't in a beautiful, wonderful way, and it's very confusing, but also, if you sit and meditate on it, it's not. It's just, it's really hard to put into words.
Oh yeah. I think that you, in your own wording, touched upon kind of like what the void is, um, in the sense of the formless, right? That is what the void is supposed to be. Now, there is conflation, there is the usual mix up of the terms void and abyss for these, what we could say are empty spaces. Now, the one thing you said, Lono, that I do want to say that I disagree on is that the void is the tree of death. Um, in the Kabbalistic sort of like manner of thinking, right? So if we're gonna go look at that with the tree of life and the 10 Sephiroth, along with the hidden spear of Da'at that comes in between Hokmah and Bina, for those who are like, what the hell is he talking about? That's the second and third spear on Tree of Life near top, and you can go ahead and Google or DuckDuckGo or search for whatever sort of pictorial image to go ahead and help you visualize that. But you stated that it was the tree of death with the Clipoth, and I'll have to disagree with that in the sense of, you could say that the tree of life is positive aspects, the growing upward of a tree, right? But the tree of death in of itself is the roots. That is part of the foundation still, right? That is part of the formed, the formation aspect of it. There, the Clipoth is in, the ancient Hebrew. That term is referring to as husks. So there is an emptiness to it in terms of its nature. That they're husks, they're shells that used to be a part of the tree of life when it was complete and before the fall, as the Abrahamic and particularly Jewish mythology goes. But when we're talking about the void in of itself, that is more so of the spears, the plane that precedes Kether, the top spear on Tree of Life of Ain Sof, or that is the unknowable, you could say, the formless. Before the process of formation begins, from the top spear of Keter and then all the way down all different spears into the earthly realm being manifested into the realm of Malkuth. So, yeah, once again, the whole sort of abyss thing, if we're going to go ahead and use that model, right, of trying to place where the abyss would be, that would be the hidden sphere of Da'at, you know, Da'ath right there, in between Bina and Hokmah, where it is a place of emptiness, but it is not the whole, or say, like, it's not as whole of an emptiness, in comparison, you know. Both of them are, I would say, not necessarily beyond human comprehension completely. Well, okay, one is more so beyond human comprehension, in that that is the domain of God, to put it just simply. Whereas the other one is like, hey, look, this is an empty open space, but it is along the way to the truer open space. Abyss is on the way towards the void in that sort of progression upward the tree from Malkuth up to Kether on the whole magician's path, you could say, of ascending into divinity or tapping into that sort of spiritual essence. Um, Now, I do want to go ahead, and I know that before we went ahead and started this recording, that one of the initial reasons why we are like, let's go ahead and talk about this, is because Lono, you have gone ahead and done void readings, for quite a while. I remember, when you just starting off doing them and all that sort of thing, and kind of like us sitting in on sessions on Discord with other people that we knew who were going ahead and doing them, and then you having adapted your own method of doing them yourself. So let's go ahead and just say, I think conceptually we got it down. Um, but how does one access the void, or at least how do you access the void? What is a means or a manner in which you feel like, hey, look, this is a useful way of doing so? What are some tips for it? What are some things to look out for, etc.?
So, the way that I enter the void, I always imagine an island and surrounded by water, and stepping into the water allows you to access the void and its aspects. And if you, the further you go deeper into the water, it allows you to be sort of more open to the void, and it seems to work fairly well. There is another method where the water is not water but tar, and you go immediately into it. It's a little faster method, but I think that the chakra cleansing and chakra clearing that my method has, uh, I think that the user of the ritual actually benefits a lot more from that than just strictly just going straight into it. If I know that Devi did, well, Devi is actually the only one that has done the void reading alone. I've always walked through the ritual with other people, like Twisted said, and so I'd like to hear her perspective on it from her personal reading.
Well, okay. So doing the void reading by myself, you gave me all the instructions. We couldn't find the time, right? That's really what it was boiled down to. And quite frankly, for anybody that knows me, I am not a patient person. I am more so gung ho. Let's go. Let's get it done. Because I don't like sitting with questions for way too long. Personal, problems. Um, but in doing the void reading and the way that you ascribe, where we're walking down into the water slowly, like literally, I could feel that icy water just um, coming up over me, over my head, and just walking into the sand. Now, I will say I am very much a sensory person, and I am a very sensitive person. So, just because it was my experience doesn't mean that it's going to be an experience for everybody, right? Um, Everyone is going to experience it differently. But I will say there was one step that I missed on the void reading, and I think that has to be, pardon me, the single most crucial step of anchoring yourself. And I completely forgot during, because it's during a meditation, right? The void ritual in and of itself is a meditation where you're focused on this thing and you're going off into the imagery and allowing yourself to go, but you do need an anchor point.
It's quick.
Do what now?
It happens really quick.
It does.
And if you're not prepared, you could.
Yeah. I did not remember the anchor point until the very end. And because I did not, I did not do it properly and anchor myself beforehand, I ended up bringing a spirit back with me, which, my good friend Twisted and Clink as well. They assisted me with ridding myself of it because what I had brought back with me was not fantastic. And it was something from a previous life that was a very negative spirit, to say the very, very least. But yes, anchor points.
I was pretty much going ahead and I had to be like, is Wayne Brady going to choke a bitch on this particular entity? Yes.
That was actually, the funny part is that was the first time that I had done an angel summoning ritual with you and Clink. So it was a new experience all around.
That was quite a while ago.
That was a long time ago.
But yes, back to anchor points as you were going on about.
Yes.
This goes to show that each part of this ritual has been tested and proven over and over again to work. But most of the method is for your own safety. With this level of meditation, I assume that the the very adept would have no problem. But sometimes you're not prepared to see what you see in the void. That's my warning.
Or even in the case of Devi, with her long, experiences of things of a spiritual, magical sort, all that, I would say she is very much adept, generally speaking, but not necessarily in this sort of having gone ahead and delved into the void and doing that sort of thing. So even for those who are experienced, if you have not traversed these waters before using what you mentioned of the void reading, stepping into the water, right? You're stepping into what is essentially the primordial waters, to go ahead and give a visualization for people. um the primordial waters of the unknown, the formless, the what preceded creation, in a sense.
I will say the second time around, whenever I was guided by Lono, was amazing, though. And I still cannot get that image of the universe in form of a jellyfish out of my head. Not in a bad way. It's more of like hauntingly beautiful kind of thing.
I had completely forgotten about the jellyfish.
You forgot about the jelly.
I
Oh, did
forgot.
you
And
forget
yet
that I
earlier
saw?
I was going jellyfish, jellyfish. Wondered why was I jellyfishing?
Absolutely. And
Um,
did you also forget that like I saw your face in this pink cloud?
it's coming back to me a little bit. Yeah,
Group
I'm getting like
meditations are awesome,
I'm getting a
and
ping in my ear.
as long as you're with the right people, it honestly provides um a little more oomph to the experience. The right people are certainly a necessary part of it.
And with that, this has been Open Resourcery on the Void.
I just want to go ahead and say I think a proper name for this is entering the void. But in a completely different note, shout out to the film Enter the Void. That has to do more so with psychedelics and disorienting experience that the film presents. To where even someone as myself, I don't necessarily take psychedelics, but it was able to entrance me in a manner. I definitely recommend that film just because it's pretty fucking dope.
Is
Not
it?
necessarily
What is
having to
that
do
one
with
about?
the void itself, however.
Enter. Which one was that one about?
It was the one film about psychedelics, or at least a dude taking substances. It's from like a first person perspective, and I don't want to get too much in detail as to talk
Oh
about the plot
yeah,
or
I've
ruin
seen
it,
this
but
one.
yeah,
This one was weird. Yeah, this one is cool.
yeah. So while it's not necessarily having to do particularly with the subject that we're talking about, just
Go Enter the
giving the
Void.
film a shout out.
I mean,
Hell
movie club.
yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. But as Alana said, that's pretty much it, and I think we covered all that we wanted to cover for this, and got all those bases. So yeah, Alana, Devi, either one of you take us away.
All right. This has been the Open Resourcery. Thank you so much for listening in. Give us, those buttons below, like, subscribe, all that kind of jazz, because it helps us out a lot. And we will see you next time.
Stay frosty, Neguses.